This stream's live and may discuss topics including mental health, addiction, depression, its treatment and other similar subjects that can be triggering or worrying to some people. If you may be negatively affected by this or you're at all uncomfortable with the subjects, please switch away now. You can always come back to watch it at another time. This show is also not suitable for children. As always, parental guidance should be applied.
Inside the temple, Mr. Wiggly, I push it, yo. Hey, step inside, I give thanks and the highest praise. Ground myself to my earth, connect out the space.
Well, hello to everybody. Thank you so much for joining. It's a wet and windy Wednesday, which would be a good lyric in the UK here. Thank you so much. There's already a whole bunch of people in the chat. Hello to Robert Fat Dust Hex. Electronic Sounds, hello to you. If you missed Sunday's live stream with Electronic Sounds, with Dean from Electronic Sounds, it was amazing, and it touched on some of the subjects that we're going to talk about tonight, which is nothing to do with music, apart from the fact that a lot of people watching and involved are into music. And we're going to ask Dean to come on himself and actually give us another chat with Ollie, if that's possible. We mentioned it briefly at the time, and I think he said he'd be up for it, which is great. A couple of other people have asked to come on as well, which is fantastic, and I think it kind of sets the tone for the future. It would be really nice if we could have guests on who can come and chat, mainly with Ollie, to be honest, and just talk things through and you know, talk about their own experiences on this, because it is incredibly entertaining and deep. It's not just entertaining talking to Ollie about this stuff, but I guess after the first kind of 50 episodes we'd probably understand more about him than he did himself, so it's important to kind of open this up. Also, if you are watching in the chat, please do share it amongst your friends or mention it to your mates or anyone that you might think would get anything from this, you know, whether it's comfort or entertainment or support or anything. It's a good way to introduce a subject, so, you know, go and check out the stream. This is obviously Smashed, and it's originally about antidepressants, really. It stemmed from a conversation that Ollie had with me, saying he wanted to go and talk about antidepressants online and do a stream, and he'd seen my streams and he thought it might be a good place to do it, really, and have me more as a kind of steerer, just steering the ship a little bit to stop it from going down any dead ends or getting carried away in one particular direction. So I'm nothing more than a kind of facilitator here. Neither Ollie nor myself are medically trained in any way whatsoever, and that should be very, very clear. So nothing of what we say is medical advice. Anything of what Ollie in particular says is basic experience, and he has been through a lot. If you've watched the previous 5 or 6, well, this is episode 6 of the previous 5, you'll see a common thread to it, which varies from kind of what on earth are you talking about, what, to hilarity actually in some of the situations, and there is always a bright side. However, we have helped, genuinely helped a couple of people at least, which is amazing. People who've reached out in the chat or talked to Ollie afterwards or been put in touch with somewhere, and who have made steps to you know, fix themselves in a certain way, to make steps to overcome whatever the issues are, whether they be addiction, whether they're fear of getting treated, you know, all this kind of stuff. And we have had some success. So to be honest, if only one person was helped and we did 100 shows, that would be enough. But it also, I think, is, Ollie would say, it's also therapy for himself as well. So it's nice for him to talk about it. However, this episode is the first with a new guest who offered to come on, and it's a guest that I think many of you will know, because if you're probably involved in the music scene that's similar to us, you'll have come across Mark Gardner and Pierrot the Acid Clown and the stream, the URL, which is Unsigned Review Live, reviewing people's tracks, and Clown Fest, which is now, I think, just the 9th one has just kicked off, where lots of people have performed at. And he's a real dynamo, I guess, in terms of getting people to do stuff and actually delivering stuff and getting things done in the music industry, as well as being a brilliant performer and artist in his own right. And a long-term friend of Ollie from ages ago. I think they put together the Pierrot the Acid Clown Enigma back in the day together. And he's not the first person that in my mind I jump to and go, crikey, there's a depressed person, or there's an addicted person, or there's a person with a lot of problems to overcome. He's a genuine, outgoing, happy, fab kind of guy who helps a lot of people. But if one thing I've learned from doing the 5 previous streams is that it's impossible to tell the number of people who've messaged me or got in touch and said, oh man, God, that was a great stream. Please keep on doing what you're doing. I suffered for 3 years with addiction, or I couldn't get out of the house for a bit, or whatever, or I'm going through a real problem at the moment, and it really lifted me up. Of people that, I've just taken for granted as friends, really, just mates, never asked them if they're okay. And suddenly it's like, oh, wow, I didn't realise you needed support in any way whatsoever. I'm here. So he's obviously got some stuff to talk about in a second. But first of all, let's say hello to the wonderful Oliver Gold. How are you doing, sir?
I just want to make it clear, first of all, that I'm not some diva that kicks off at suggested guests. Like you made out. Dean might be coming on. I don't know. We spoke to Ollie. He said maybe. It's not what.
That's not what I meant to say. Goodness me, it must have come out wrong.
I know. I'm only messing about.
I spoke to Dean, and I'm not sure, to be honest. But yeah. Anyway, how's your week been?
Really good. Yeah, I posted up about somebody I know who has been struggling with heroin. I can't go into too many details. Cool. Just in case there are people that may know him, or he's keeping it secret, because I haven't really spoken to him too much about how many people know. But we've been chatting for the past month, and he told me that he's been hooked on it, blah, 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 this and that. And he checked in yesterday.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So he's never done it before. He's been struggling with this for 10 years, on and off. And he's been white-knuckling it for the last year at least. And he's gone in. So this is really exciting for me, and it's really nice.
Fantastic.
Really nice when somebody manages to do it, 'cause it's really hard to do. So I'm sure everybody in the chat's going to be wishing him well and everything. And
absolutely.
Yeah, last week I spoke about a group of friends which were all helping each other, but also sabotaging themselves at the same time.
The band that you were with, the group that you were with, I guess, always out for their mates, but not looking after themselves effectively.
Well, there was a couple of groups that I wandered around in, and there was the band, there was Mark, I was DJing with Mark, but Mark was also one of those friends at that time. So, a lot of the people that we were around with were very self-destructive, but we all had each other's backs, and we were in this sort of really, I'm losing words again, as I always do, but we were all trying, but we weren't trying in the right way, and we were helping each other, and we were just fucking our own lives up. And Mark was one of the groups of which I was in, and he was definitely one of those people. And I've known Mark for a very long time, 20 odd years now, I think, and we've been through a lot together. And it's only since I got better that I actually realised Mark was as tortured and in as much pain as he is. So it really shows, you can know somebody for that long, and until you really start to get better yourself, you can't really notice those habits and features in other people. And I just want to say, before Mark comes on, how brave he is doing this, and hopefully we can have a nice chat, and it won't be too taxing on him.
Absolutely. And Mark, I'll bring you on in one step, but if there's things that you don't want to talk about, obviously you don't have to say. Don't feel uncomfortable. This is a safe space for absolutely everybody. But yeah, wholeheartedly agree. Mark Gardner, hello. Thank you so much for coming on. It does take an awful lot of guts. It's very easy for me to sit here and go, oh yeah, let's come and talk about that. It's just impossible to imagine, that to be able to open yourself up effectively to the world like this. Although it's a small group of people watching you, it does stay around. So, yeah, thank you so much. How are you doing, sir?
Nervous as hell.
I know that one.
Like, this is where out of my comfort zone. I'm not in control of this stream. I'm not running it. I don't have to give feedback on tracks, which I do each week. This is like frank discussion about how messed up we all are.
What are you nervous about, really? Because you mentioned to me you wouldn't have enough to talk about, and I didn't believe that to a certain extent when you mentioned.
Can I add content and weight to what you guys already do? Is what I say relevant? That kind of thing. Again, self-doubt. What can I bring to the party? Can I bring anything to the party? Oh, don't have me on, and off I run.
Well, can I ask then? What's your major issue then? That I don't think it's addiction, but is there addiction? Is there depression, is agoraphobia. You know, there's so many things that we've touched on in the last kind of few weeks. What are you battling, or is that too broad a question?
My main one is agoraphobia. I hate going outside. Honestly, there's too many variables outside, and things can go wrong, and you know, shit can turn nasty real quick. That's why I don't like going outside. Depression is another thing, and I did actually kick addiction, and I didn't realize I kicked addiction. I guess we all went out and, you know, did pills like every week, and then suddenly you stop, and after about 3 or 4 months, I was getting brain wobbles. And it wasn't until I got with a girlfriend who kicked prescription drugs addiction that she was like, "Oh yeah, that's brain wobbles. You get that when you stop taking drugs." I'm like, "Oh really?" So that's what that was.
Wow! And you just decided to stop, and you'd managed to work it through, and you.
I was working as a chef at the time, and it was like, well, I've just got to carry on, you know. And I didn't know what was happening to me either. It was only about a year afterwards when I got with the girl, and she was like, "Oh yeah, that's that," and I'm like, "Oh, so that explains that," you know. I just kind of, I was head of a kitchen at the time. So you just got to kind of keep going.
Well, the agoraphobia thing is a real common issue amongst the last few themes. So I'm not saying it's common to many people, but it has come up quite a lot because when Kent came on, when Ollie had a panic attack, I think it was issue 3, he told us about the fact that he hadn't been able to leave the house for like 30 years, and he just got used to it. And it's true, you know. I mean, it's unbelievable. I popped to see him a couple of days ago, and I met the dentist coming out his house because they do a home visit. You know,
wow.
He just won't leave. You know, all these things. I thought, oh God, yeah, you can't even go out and do that. Also, funny enough, Dean again popped in the chat saying, you know, his was agoraphobic. So, but anyway, let me pass it over to Oliver, and I will sit in the background and. Because I'm interested to hear. As 2 old friends that go back that long, it's kind of a slightly strange thing. It's almost harder to talk to someone about this than it is if they're completely, you know, not in your circle of friends at all.
I don't know actually. I'm actually more nervous about talking to Mark now. Now it's started, then I was actually talking about myself. To be fair, so I've just been sat here listening to the conversation, trying to find bits to touch on, and I'm like,
wow, wow.
But I suppose the easiest place to start would be something that you quite publicly post about quite a lot. Is when you dive into these holes, and you know we do talk about this, but you know we're never able to really get really talk in detail about the holes, because whenever I come over, we're there to do something. So I'd be interested to actually to talk about if you know you're going to go into them, what happens when you go into them, because I know I've given you advice about getting out of them, but I don't know whether really it's helped when I've given you my spin on that. So tell us about the holes, Mark.
Okay then. Well, you can feel a hole coming on, and you know it's going to come, and you can fight it. You can fight it and try not to fall into it. What I do, and I'm really lucky that I can do this as well. I dive into the hole.
Yeah.
Like literally, and because I work part-time and I don't have massive commitments like every day, I can dive into that hole and relish in that hole for as long as I want, you know, whereas a lot of people can't, because they've got like kids and work and commitments and stuff, so they've got to carry around like almost falling into that hole for like a couple of weeks before they can actually like dive into that hole. Screw it, let's just dive in, let's put some placebo on and just cry my fucking eyes out for like 2 fucking days, just, you know, then it's this, and you feel such a sense of relief. But if you can't crumble and go into the hole and like embrace it because you've got commitments, then you're just going to be dragging it around.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know how busy I am all of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
When I feel like I'm going into what you call a hole, I have to deal with what you were talking about earlier when you said when you were working as a chef and you just had to fucking do it.
Yeah.
And I know I've got that power to just do it, but I've had to like deal with that differently. So I have to like give myself little bits of hole. Do you know what I mean? I bang my headphones on and I'll put a bit of Death Cab for Cutie on or Elliott Smith, and I'll give myself smaller amounts of holes. Do you know what I mean? And slowly try and dig myself out of it. Now, if I get 2 different ones at the same time, it becomes a little bit more complicated and I tend to crash. Or when stuff gets a little bit overwhelming, I tend to crash because then I drop all the other coping mechanisms I've got. But it's very interesting like how you indulge the hole, because I also indulge it as well.
Can you just tell me what a hole is? What are you talking about? Are you just a deep depression you're dropping into?
Literally a depression, a takedown of all your feelings.
So it's almost like a manic depressive would drop into their hole of depression suddenly for no particular reason, or it might be triggered by something, but all of a sudden you just don't give a toss anymore. You just, no,
it's right. I think it's less you don't give a toss, and it's suddenly all of your emotions and everything you've been holding onto and holding in suddenly just has to come out.
Yeah.
And I've become really good at managing that, and sort of when I, like looking at my feelings and sort of doing things which will help my feelings come out bit by bit. If you can imagine, like a pressure cooker, Mark will hold it all, and then suddenly the top will blow off, or he'll realise he needs to open the catch.
Got you. Yeah, it's a pressure cooker. Right. Sorry. So yeah, carry on. I just wasn't quite clear about what you were discussing. Okay, brilliant.
So yeah, it is just depression, and I think manic depression. I think I was diagnosed with manic depression, bipolar, and I'm up and down quite quick, or I can be. Sometimes I'll get caught, but I think Mark dives for a while, and it's like, how do you cope with that? Do you know what I mean? Why is it placebo, for instance, that enables you out of the hole?
Because I believe everything that comes out of Brian's mouth. I don't believe he's fake. His words are beautiful, and they speak to me. There's something inside you that feels the music, and for me, placebo is really bass driven, and it's lush.
Yeah. I mean it's interesting actually, because it'd be interesting to see in the chat as well, to see how other people deal with that. Because I think indulging it and dealing with it like that is a very healthy way to do it. I think Mark, like everything else, does an extreme version of it, which if it works, it works.
If it works, it works.
You're allowed to be down. This is
of course you are.
You're allowed to feel those horrible, painful feelings. It's part of humanity. It's the ups and the downs. You can't experience the good if you don't have the bad. So embrace it. Feel sad for a minute. It's okay. You're not a useless human. You're going to be all right in a couple of days. Everything's going to be all right. Just embrace it.
Yeah.
Matt Evans is saying, it's how I deal with my black days. Shut off, allow it to do what it does, understand that it will bugger off at some point, and wait for that point.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And I think, again, the power of this show, potentially, before, when I used to get these, before I knew what it was, if there was somebody speaking to me telling me this is okay, allow yourself it, then oh shit, actually this is normal. Yeah. Instead of being some weird freak.
It's almost like you're wallowing in it. I know it's the funny thing to say, but you're just like, oh yeah, I'm just, if I'm going to feel down, I'm just going to wrap myself up. I'm going to feel really down, and I'm, because placebo is not up music generally.
No.
Generally, it's suffer with me kind of music. So that's I understand. And how long would that last then? Is that a few days we're talking about, Mark? Or
again, how long's this piece of string?
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah, my worst depressive phase was going back when I to about 2009, 2008, 7, 8, 9, and I spent 3 years doing nothing.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, literally just sat in my room, no TV on, no music playing, no creation of music, just sat there for 3 years. It was fucking horrible. All I did was work, come home, and just there was no existence to my life whatsoever at all. And it was horrific, and I never want to go back to that again. So if I can feel the depression coming on, I'll wallow in it for a bit, because the wallowing is so much better than doing nothing for 3 years,
But again, this is another thing about society. I see wallowing in something as a negative, and whenever it's been used, the word wallowing has been a negative. Oh, stop wallowing in your sorrow. I think my mum used to say when I was a kid.
It's all about you. Do you know
what I mean? And this kind of society's kind of taking it away from you. You're not allowed to feel. You're not allowed to sort of indulge a feeling. You've got to be, especially as a man and a boy. I mean, we're men of a certain age now, aren't we? I think Dom's a little bit ahead of me.
Yeah.
Mark, I think you and Mark are about the same age, aren't you? And
50, early 50s.
Yeah,
I'm older, so yeah.
Mark, Dom's Mark, he was back in the Stone Age, but men are supposed to be firm, and there's a guy called Andrew Tate, everybody knows him, and he says he says about sort of blocking off your feelings and not allowing your feelings through, and I think to a certain extent he is right, but on the other hand, you kind of have to feel as a human being, don't you? And men have had that taken away from them for so long to the point where feeling and show emotion is demasculating, which is
it's
very fucking sad.
It is changing.
Like this is, there's 3 men here talking about how depressed we are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it does change. And when you said, "Oh, in some ways he's right," I kind of went, "I actually don't think he is." It's, if you're putting it on, it's kind of wrong.
Well, no, there's a time and a place for everything, isn't there? There's a time when you need to hold your ground and you need to be a man in life. There's a time when you need to be firm and you need to put yourself forward and make sure you're not being trodden over. But there's also a time where you need to be emotional. And there's also a time where you need to allow your emotions. And I think people find it very easily just to coat your whole life in this one ethos. When, well, I think we all know that as a human, you're at least 10 different people, but not personalities, but you're 10 different people in your work life, in your relationship, performance. When you're writing a song, I know if I'm ever writing, or when I used to write a song, I wasn't the same scared idiot that was walking around the streets. Do you know what I mean? I was an emotional person that wasn't scared, that was trying to understand where I was. And another interesting fact, how does music help you go through this, and how does the creative process help you with your...
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Actually, first off, Acid Energy, thank you so much for joining. Didn't expect this. Not the lightest of topics. Respect for openly speaking about this in publicly. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, this is what it's all about. Please do tell your friends. It's grown-up talk, isn't it? It's serious stuff. And the point is that there are so many people in our circle of friends and people who are finding this stream that suffer from an element of this, or a lot of it, or a small part of it that can relate, and just don't discuss it. Don't discuss it up until now. I'm amazed at the amount of people and the seriousness of some of the issues as well, whether it be addiction or depression or whatever. So, very, very welcome. But I was just going to say on the music side, it obviously cures stuff, but I've seen artists the day after their tour, coming off that to absolutely nothing and waking up in their bedsit or their bedroom having been, almost idolized for 3 months or 3 weeks or whatever. And especially if they're big bands, just the whole thing comes crashing down. And what I wanted to ask first, I suppose, really was, is there a trigger for this depression that kind of kicks it off? I'm not saying causes the whole thing, but if you're prone to it, can something happen and suddenly it kicks in, or is it just creep up on you all the time and kicks it off? I guess that question's to Mark.
It can be anything. It can be the tiniest little comment, and you overanalyze it, and you just you just come in on yourself, Also, outside factors that you can't control as well, and things are going wrong, and it just brings you down.
But way more than it kind of should.
Yeah,
I suppose.
Yeah. You just fixate on it.
I found before I understood myself a little bit more, those little things that I picked up in society would be an excuse for me to blame those feelings on. So that little comment that somebody said, I'd focus on that, and that would ruin my week, when really it was the stuff I hadn't dealt with that was ruining my week. But it was much easier to blame someone else, or what somebody said, or a situation that was out of my control, than it was actually, doing the work and kind of finding out why, which obviously, we found from people that it's hard to get that help. But, do you think that's the case, Mark, or would you say it was something deeper?
No, I totally agree with you. When somebody says something and you take offense to it, tiny little comments, it's generally something that you're not addressing in your own life that makes you look at it, and that's why it kind of brings you down.
So to go back to what Ollie was originally asking, which is how does music help you through this stuff? I mean, obviously it's a massive part of your life, but I mean, what is it? Is it the wallowing and the relating to the tunes, or how is it helping you through the whole thing?
Music's been with, honestly, like a massive crutch for me for so many years, and you latch onto certain bands like Soundgarden, Faith No More, Nirvana to a degree. It's all kind of high energy music that from artists that I actually believe. that kind of helps. It's kind of it's nice to know that other people feel the same way as me, you know, and I'm kind of wallowing in their stuff as well as I'm wallowing in mine. So I can relate to that kind of thing. And to be fair, music like this kind of music, doing this on stage is the biggest hype in the world. That's the reason I do all this, is for the on stage. And when you get there and you set your kit up, and like literally 5 minutes before, your heart's racing. I was at Surplus, I nearly cried because I didn't want to go on. It was horrific. I had nobody with me. Yeah. And I don't want to do this set. The set's going to be horrible. I'm not going to fuck it up. It's going to be horrible. And then you get to do the set, and there's people on the dance floor there absolutely loving it. You finish the set and they come off and they're like, that set was amazing. It's like, right, okay, that's why I put up with the bullshit beforehand, because it's like when it's so much better at the other end when it goes well. You know, that's why I do this.
Well, when you perform, you go into something called flow state. I don't know if anybody's ever looked into that.
Yeah.
But flow state appears when your oh fuck's sake, what's the your adrenaline starts kicking. You concentrate and you exert yourself. And those are three factors that used to happen when you were being chased by an animal, or we were being predated on by animals, or in dangerous situations.
Kind of fight
or flight. But if you've ever been in flow state, and it normally happens in like a really dangerous situation when everything slows down. And so you often hear people when you're in accidents, everything went slow, and your body goes into this sort of mega survival mode, and everything heightens. And those three factors are what start that. And that also happens when you perform, and it puts your head into this. It's called being in the zone when you're playing with people. You know, when you're in that zone, when you're in a band, and everything's just fucking working. Well, that's flow state. And that is what I chased when I performed. Well, I used to call performing, I used to get rid of my demons when I was DJing or playing bass, because I'd hit the flow state and suddenly everything was just right. But dealing with the 5 minutes when you first start, when everything's fucking wrong and you're panicking, you really want to throw up, you hit flow state and then you're fucking there. But it's an actual state you can put yourself into with those three factors.
Wow.
And I've practiced putting myself into that. And it happens when you work out, but you've got to have a bit of a dangerous situation too. So I don't know. I used to run and then sort of like do a big jump or something, a little bit of a dangerous jump, and then you'd be in it, and then suddenly you'd be there. But it was one of the best sort of, when I was really ill, it was one of the best things I did to pull myself out of these really like crazy downs, not like the little holes that you get. And I'm not saying your holes are little. What I'm saying is, real like sort of kill yourself, sort of like close to killing yourself things. And that was a really clever thing. So I would advise everybody or anybody who's going through this to look into flow state. There's whole books on it, loads of podcasts. Really good thing. And just try it, even if you're not, because it's a crazy place to be, especially if you've never experienced it on stage.
It's definitely a working out thing when the endorphins kind of kick in and you get over that kind of break through the wall or whatever. If you're a marathon runner, not that I'm a marathon runner, but my dad used to do a lot of marathon running, and he would say, you run and run and run and it hurts, and then suddenly everything's fine and actually you feel great. And it's when your body releases the endorphins that almost act as painkillers, or opiates or something inside that give you that feeling. I never thought about it on stage before. I'm normally so nervous about what's going on that maybe in rehearsal rooms sometimes when there's no pressure, where you're just actually we're on it, but not the stage thing. Well,
I don't know, maybe when you look back on it, Dom, I think you'll find that you would have been in there, because if you were that nervous, it's like a gig just disappears, doesn't it?
Yes, that is true, actually. It
just goes, and that's when you're there. But unless you know about it, you can't go, I'm here. But then realising you're here, you can knock yourself out of it.
Yeah. You're right, actually. Thinking back, I can remember gigs very clearly, some of the big ones that obviously don't remember being about at all on stage, but they've come back a little bit afterwards. And it was a real kind of an effortless kind of flow, actually. That's a really good word for it.
But you get off stage and you're like,
yeah.
That's when you're there. So it's such a useful tool if you can get yourself there. So please.
Interesting question from Alien Pro saying, do you think the constant pursuit of that flow state can make the lows even heavier?
I think it distracts you from the lows. To be fair, it's not like a drug. It's not like a drug, is it? I mean, you know, you're not putting a chemical in your body, and you're not forcing your body to do something you haven't earned. You're earning it, so your body's going to pay you off. So you know, you've got to do things to make your body go there. Mm-hmm. So you know, I don't think the lows can be even heavier, but I think also if you go into it expecting the lows to be heavier, most likely your lows are going to be heavier. So you know, that sort of thinking is not good.
It's
really.
A pure energy, not in a hippie way, but is it? Mark, you was kind of half nodding and half shaking your head.
Well, I was chasing. Like, I had my first gig back at Landed Festival after COVID, and I was fucking hyped for it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to, like Oliver said, I'm going to get into flow state. It's going to be amazing. That time change is going to happen. It's going to feel like I'm in a different world. And the set was horrific. All of my kit failed. Like everything that could have gone wrong that day did go wrong. Out of all the kit that was here, I was using about 3 machines because nothing was talking to each other, and the low off of that was honestly literally suicidal. It was horrific. And I was there with Jen and somebody else at the time, and literally they were like, we're at a festival, let's get happy. And I'm like, my set was so bad last night, you know. So the low was just like super low because I didn't get that flow state, because the set didn't go well. It was absolutely horrific.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're not always going to get there, but as long as it doesn't impact on your, you know, on the long-term kind of lows that you're getting as a part of your natural cycle of bipolarity, or in whatever way, you know, whether it's a natural thing or bipolar or whatever. Are either of you treated for bipolar in terms of ongoing medication?
I got diagnosed when I was like just a drug bag walking around. Basically, but you know, to make any sense in my head then was fucking...
Are we going to prescribe you this? No, I've already had 4 already.
What do you mean? Yeah. They're not working. It's not working. Why is that, Mr. Good? I don't know. How much heroin have you done today? Quite a lot. I was diagnosed as that, and you know, in previous episodes I've discussed my depression and where it came from. But, you know, I'm susceptible to it, and I always will be, and the diagnosis is on my sheet. Whether I'd be called bipolar now because I'm managing it and I understand it's another story. But, you know, I think I know I'm prone to those lows and highs.
I just wondered chemically if it stabilizes or if it's a help, you know, if it's something. You both seem to be fully aware of it and dealing with it in your own slightly separate ways, which is amazing. I'm sure that's much better than any drugs that you could take to numb it.
But again, you know, this is a tag that was placed on me. It's not me. I'm somebody that goes up and down. That it's just how I am, and I accept that, and I've stopped fighting it, and I indulge it when I'm low, and I indulge it when I'm high. And you'll see stupid videos of me on Facebook singing the Bee Gees. I was at a high period. You know what I mean? It was ridiculous.
You were good. You were really good, actually.
I hit some of the notes.
Don't encourage it, please.
Yeah. Sorry.
But you know, you probably won't see my lows online. But you're more likely to see Mark's lows online. You know, whereas you're very less likely to see Mark's highs online, which is.
The highs are the sets and the music and the stuff. And the lows are, and this is another way to get dopamine. This is another way to get those hits of, you know, if I'm sad and I'll put a post up that I know is sad, and other people just kind of take the piss and put funny comments on it. It's the dopamine and the interaction you get off of that kind of lifts you up a little bit more. You know, you're not in a depressed state at that point because you're conversing with people in a humorous way. So
that's
Facebook
interesting
to me is
as well.
Massively important.
Half Biscuit was saying his first diagnosis was bipolar, which was then changed to PTSD. Sometimes you wonder if psychiatry is a guessing game. I mean, yes, if you start getting treated for something and then they work out it was triggered by something else, I think it's better if you can deal with it. I'm amazed, though, just to go back to the start of the show, we're talking about this where you are suffering longer term drops in mood and severe depression than Ollie has. Probably you haven't been to the depths of addiction that Ollie has, but I'm sure you've had your moments. And you hide it so well. You really do hide it so well. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but you know, I would never have thought that you were dealing with that level of trauma or whatever, you know, and having to keep going. Because I mean, I know everyone outwardly who is, you know, outgoing and happy and influential in a good way, you know, getting people to get your sets in and go out and do gigs or something, you know, they're generally not thought of to be the go home and depressed state and not be able to come out for 3 days. So I think what you're doing is amazing.
Well, I mean, so we both, myself and Mark, have had childhood trauma. It's not my place to talk about Mark's. I've spoken about my own, but you know, from knowing Mark and knowing those situations, Mark's an incredibly strong, brave person to be where he is now. And no, you are, mate. You are, and you know, if you're willing to talk about that, that's fine. If you're not, that's fine. But, you know, totally. People do need to know that, you know, whatever you say is coming from a place of, you know, great experience.
I'm actually going through a depressed state at the moment. I have no desire to want to write music. And that's horrific for somebody who's so big and got so much kit, you know, and such a big footprint on music. You know, it's horrible. It's really, really horrible.
What happens if you try?
It just doesn't feel the same. You know, it feels forced. That it doesn't feel like Oliver says in the flow moment. It just it sounds like horrible noise. One day it'll sound beautiful, and it's like write some music now because it's sounding good. You know, because you're in the mood. But yeah, at the moment I have no, like the thing I did for Dean's show was the first thing I've done since literally the first new stuff I've done since lockdown. So yeah, I'm hoping this period of me not wanting to write music disappears sometime soon.
Yeah, wow. I see. Not knowing that's. I mean, Ollie, you said that your swings were quite rapid, I guess, weren't they? So yeah, they at least you know there's not far around the corner that it's going to change.
Well, I think mine are a lot more rapid now because I don't tie a writer's block or a creative gap in with my mental health. It's just I'm not feeling music at the moment. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I feel Mark's very much like his heart. Well, everybody that knows Mark knows his heart's on his sleeve 100% of the time, and everything that he goes through is emotionally connected. And I know for a fact that the large majority, Mark hasn't written anything since lockdown, is that he's been struggling, and he's directly tying his creative loss to a depression, and he's put a wall up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's having a paddy with himself.
Yep.
He's literally self-sabotaging himself and punishing himself for what he's going through by not letting himself make music.
Well, every day that I don't make music, it's like you're letting yourself down, man. You're letting the community down. You're like everybody puts tracks into the URL and they're fucking amazing and they're getting so much better. And it's like you haven't made anything for 3 years, mate. Like you know, get it together. Come on.
Do you think that link's fair then, though? Because it sounds sort of almost self-generating as well. You know, it's like if you can just put it down to a bad musical day rather than winding yourself up about not being able to do music because you're depressed, which makes yourself depressed. Because
if it hadn't gone on for so long, yeah, comfortably, I could say, oh, I'm just not feeling it at the moment. If it's been like 2 or 3 months, I'm just not feeling it, it'll pass. But this has literally been since the start of lockdown. I've done like nothing musical. The only reason I started Clownfest was because I knew I wasn't going to do anything musical. You know, they said, oh, we're going into lockdown, we're not going anywhere. I'm like, oh God, what the fuck am I going to do? So that's where Clownfest came from.
Wow, there's a lot of cycling people in the chat. Matt Evans, 24 to 48 hours, and half god, half beast. Same as Matt, often accompanied by a migraine. Electronic Sounds is brutal cycle. Self-sabotage is a fucker from I Am a Maniac. I was going to say on a lighter note, on a congratulatory note, if I can just find this post from Rob Fat Dust. Finally a place where I can say it and I won't be judged. I was having a drink every bloody evening for the last 10 years. This is my 5th week without a drop, so I can get no sense. That is amazing.
That's amazing. And I love he's finally realised it's stopping him getting simps. Because that's the only way you're ever going to beat anything. Yeah. There has to be a drastic bad side to any sort of behaviour.
Wow. Yeah, no, brilliant. Well done, Rob. That's well done.
Yeah, well done, Rob. Because alcohol's one of the hardest things to kick.
Well, that was my only thing. I mean, I haven't drunk really for as long as Lula May's been born, but I drank heavily and consistently for a long period of time before that.
What? You've never said this. We've done 6 shows.
If you say you don't drink, it's like, it's always a functioning person, and always like hardcore job, lots of stuff going on. But generally, I'd have a drink every night, and I'd often wake up hungover, and I'd still function. And it was to me, it seemed to be a way to switch off. There'd be so much going on in my head that a couple of beers, 4 beers, whatever, I'd be able to sleep. Do you know what I mean? So it was like self-medicating the kind of switch off, which is weird. But then I stopped. I literally stopped about
when Lula May came along.
When Lula May came along, because Sophia obviously stopped drinking when she became pregnant, and it was making me grumpy, and I wasn't a particularly nice person in general. So I thought, okay, that's it, and that's what gave me the click. But yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
very interesting. Really. It's a good lesson, isn't it? If there's something important enough, then you will do it.
That's the key.
You've got to find that important thing.
That's the key, yeah. If I thought for any moment that our relationship might break down, or I wouldn't be a good father, or I wasn't functioning, and you realise very quickly with a kid, as you know, it's like you can't be hungover with a kid.
No.
It's just impossible to function, and it's not fair. And yeah, so that was it. And you begin, as you get older, you feel less healthy. So I never got to a stage where I was like, drinking in the morning or particularly missing work or anything like that. But it was just constant, and you think this can't be doing you any good. Do you know what I mean? It's constant repetition. So yeah, I have to say I didn't feel magically brilliant when I stopped. Nothing particularly. I did expect, the clouds to open and the sun to come out. Kind of felt similar, but
I think that's happened now though.
Yes,
Dom, hasn't it?
Yeah,
it takes a bit of time. Doesn't
it does take a little bit of time to make it work, but yeah. And I realised you cannot function. I mean, this is very similar to what Dean was talking about. You just cannot function like that as you get older.
No.
Maybe when you're 18, 20, 25 or whatever, 30, you can go out and get absolutely mashed and then come home and do something the next day, but it just doesn't work as you grow older. So anyway, very well done, Rob Hex, by Small Synths. Congratulations to you, sir. So yeah, so
how do you get yourself to a gig then, Mark? Well, what happens if your whole tends like lines up with a gig, lines up with having to pack down? What do you put in place? How do you get through it?
Somebody take me. Literally, if I've got somebody with me, it kind of halves the load, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like if you come with me, I'll go. If you, like literally hold my hand. Honestly, I'm not coming across great here at all, am I?
No, you are. You're coming across amazing. You're coming across amazing. I mean, it's such a hard thing to do, to just sit here and open up and go, I'm a broken person. This is me. I'm trying to be better.
Well, Jen Stevens, we met at Landed, and like I say, I took a big dive at Landed because my set was crap, and then we met up at another festival. She's like, "Oh, you're gonna be nice and happy this weekend," and I'm like, "No, we're out, and there's loads of people out there, and I gotta go and meet them all, I gotta mingle with them as well." So people meet me, and they're like, you are a little bit different. You're much more timid than the persona that you put out online. It's like, yeah, unfortunately, you get like a condensed version of me like once a week, but yeah, the real me hates the outside world completely. Like, I stayed in the van the whole time for the festival, and Jen off with Warren and whoever else we were with, and they're like, "Do you not want to come out?" And I'm like, "No, I'm fine here."
So there's a story I don't think me and Mark have told publicly, but we had a falling out, and you're all like, anybody that's been to do with Pierrot the Acid Clown and the URL for a while will remember that breakup that we did. And we've been arguing for a while. We've been in each other's pockets like constantly. We were just arguing for a year. And then Mark said something to me that pushed me over the edge, and I was like, "Fuck you, Mark." And what was coming up? What was coming up was a gig in Ireland that we had to go and do. And an Irish free party. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this story up is because what Mark's just said then is he needs somebody else to go. But what ended up happening from this argument is Mark going by himself to Ireland with all of these simps, with the promoter saying, yeah, probably don't wear your clown makeup because it might not go down too well. Like, how did you get yourself there? Because I know you're in a bad place when we were arguing, like we both were.
He paid me. I'm under contract at that point. There's nothing I can do to get out of it. Like, literally, like, what am I supposed to... Sorry, mate, I can't come. I'm a little depressed. What? He's not going to fucking wear that, is he? So, literally, I'm like, where's my big boy pants? Where's my big boy pants? So I'm going to pull those right up and go all the way to Sodding Island on my own. Oh, my God. But they were lovely people. They were absolutely lovely people. I met Sterling Moss there as well. You know, so again, you know, my apprehension for going to Ireland was like, you know, massive. And then you get there and the party's amazing. I met Jared, who fixes synths and does mods on 303s. I met Aaron Higgins and Lord Backlash. And honestly, they were fucking the nicest people you've ever met in your life. So there's like, I hate when my anxiety will work me up into such a tizzy that when I actually get there, I actually have a good time. It's like, why were you worried in the first place, mate? Just like chill the hell out, you know?
It's a really stupid question, I think. But what are you worried about?
Everything. Absolutely everything. I'm going to get my kit stolen. I'm going to get beaten up. I'm not going to like anybody. You know, I'm going to get knifed. I'm going to get fucking, you know, all these things run through my mind. And I just fixate on that. And it's going to be bad. It's going to be horrible. Something's going to go wrong and they're going to absolutely fucking hate me. And, you know.
And does that apply outside of doing a gig as well? Like you know, like Kent being unable to leave the house for anything, or is this just really focused on doing gigs that causing you anxiety?
Oh, like, no, literally walking out the fucking door. I hate it. I have my avoidance kit, my human avoidance kit, and they involve headphones and sunglasses. And I will wear sunglasses when it's sodding raining. Literally, don't talk to me. Just like I just want to be a ghost walking through town. Honestly, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But what's so powerful about that is, and I don't know how or why I've got this I don't give a fuck ideology, but all of those things go through my mind. But I'm just like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Who gives a fuck? I'm just going to turn up and do it. I like leave the house. Like I think everybody has that, but it's what about it that brings it so prevalent in your head that that's all you can focus on. And secondarily, if money or the fact that you've contractually agreed to do this is enough to make you do it, what else in these situations could you apply that has the same gravity as that letting somebody down contractually or the money? Do you know what I mean? Are there things in these situations when you get in that situation, when it does start to get you really sort of overwhelmed, can you apply another factor that's going to make you do it that isn't money or contractual obligation?
I hate letting people down. Hate being a cunt. You know, it's like these two things will contractually oblige me to do something for someone. You know, if I'm indebted to someone and then I have to do it. You know, there are like you said to me the other day. You came around here a couple of weeks back and you were like, "Oh, I need reasons to come over and see you." Not like you need reasons, but like my mixer needs fixing. Oh, I can go over and see you, kind of thing, because there's a reason to go and do it. You know, I'm not just gonna like drop round your house. You know, I need like reasons to go and do things. So yeah.
What's that about? Is that because you don't want to go round, or you?
No, it's because I don't have time.
Right.
And so my schedule's going to be, this person's paying me to do this. This person's paying me to do that. I need to spend some time with Melissa because I'm running around like an idiot all the time. Oh no, my mate's in need. His stuff needs to be looked at. I'm going to go over and do that because he needs it being done. You know, and I'll put that over myself. But you know, going and hanging out and not having anything achieve or happen in that time. If Mark lived round the corner, it'd happen a lot more. But for me to get to Mark's is like 2 buses or a 20 quid taxi, you know, so it makes it a lot harder. So that's why that is. It's not down to any sort of mental health, or maybe my ideology is mentally unstable, or why I've come to. I need to look at that. But
I mean,
yeah.
this is from the man who scratched Bee Gees records for 20 minutes. So I mean, obviously you're not that worried about feedback.
Well, no, I actively wanted to annoy everybody.
I think that's Oliver's fucking gambit for everything, though. If I can annoy someone, or that's how he gets over it, I think.
Well, it's like I knew for a fact there'd be at least 60 people watching, right? They're all trying to watch decent acts, and they've got to sit through me doing the for 20 minutes, right? And the fact I know they've got to sit through me, I will spend 40 quid on Bee Gees records. I will unpack my decks. I will spend 40 quid on taxis, and I will go and annoy these people. And I know that it's a 20-minute challenge, so they are going to go, he's not going to do that for 20 minutes. So they're then going to be annoying themselves knowing they've got what? Yeah. And I get off on that.
I wasn't the only one. I sat there through it.
Yeah,
I did say afterwards it was brilliant, and I think Mark took me seriously.
It wasn't.
It wasn't that good, to be honest.
It wasn't, but this is another one of my little hobbies I've got that keeps me entertained.
As a piece of art, it was beautiful.
There's some thick skin there. Music. Some really thick skin. There's a couple more congratulations to go on, which is fantastic. Craig Tidswell. I forced myself to stop a heavy weed habit for over 30 years after speech problems began to get worse after a joint. It was tough, but I feel the benefit, and I haven't had a smoke since March. Well, that's flipping brilliant, Craig. Well done.
Hey, Craig, I'm in regular contact with Craig. How you doing, mate? Fair play to you, man.
Really good. And Brain Sniff as well. Not had a drink since September. Done our last Brain Sniff gig without a drink and was having it. So amazing. I mean,
how did you do it, Brain Sniff? Stuff. How did you do it, mate? Put in the comments how you did it, because there are people out there that need to know this stuff. I tend to have a very blasé, I just did it because of this, and I just did what people told me. But sometimes that's not that easy. So that'd be really great information, mate, if you've got time to type that out.
Totally. Well, I think it's got something to do with the fact that Leaf started to come together. Like, remember when?
Oh, is that Leaf?
Yeah, that's Leaf.
Hello, Leaf.
By the way, I'm their bassist at the moment as well.
Oh God.
Yeah, mate, he came around the weekend, and it's going to be brutal. Honestly, we're really good. But yeah, no, Leaf's stuff just started to come together about 5 years ago, and he's continuing to build on that. So, like, it's either make some music and make it sound really good, put it into the URL and get loads of praise, or get drunk.
Well, when we met Leaf, he was a fucking mess.
Yeah, he really was. Really was.
Fucking mess. And he came over to help us do a stream, and he got so wasted that he passed out on the floor, and I picked him up to like help him up and get him back to where we were doing the show, and he came up on one of my teeth, and his bald head went into the toilet and cut his head open. Yep.
He broke one of my speakers that night as well. We're outside Lakota doing a gig, and he's just like falling all over my speakers and pulling the plugs out and stuff.
I had wonderful teeth.
No, you didn't.
I fucking did.
Never have wonderful teeth.
I had wonderful straight teeth at the top until Leaf fucking hit it.
That's a lie. That is a lie.
Oh, Leaf. And he probably didn't want to be outed. I'm very sorry, Leaf, on behalf of everyone.
No. Leaf's fine with that. We've told this story publicly before. Yeah, no, I'd never.
His Clownfest 9 set. Oh my God, it was amazing. From that party, that first party where we met him, and he came over, and he's triggering all of his synths by hand, and no MIDI going to them whatsoever. And to see what he's doing now is absolutely amazing. His set was fucking brutal.
Wow.
Yeah, but honestly. But I said that story to highlight how far he's come along.
Wow.
Because that guy, I mean, I've probably spent about sort of 25 hours with Leaf all in all. And the amount of shit.
Mate. You spent way longer with him.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. 27 hours there and back.
All right, yeah. So 48 hours I've spent with Leaf. But, like the amount of stuff he's been through. And all the stuff that he's been going through, for him to be able to kick alcohol like that is fucking mental.
Yeah, it sounds. I mean, he's saying, I don't know if this is how he did it or why or whatever, but he's saying it's my birthday the day after the gig. I'd been drinking at Stonehenge for 2 days, went to Gloucestershire for a gig, then drove home after. And he's saying that's lightweight behaviour for me with the teeth incident. So yeah, this is hardcore. I'm with Iron Maniac. Well done, Brain Sniff. That's amazing. Because if you're associating drink with music, like if you're associating drugs with being in the studio, or drink or drugs with gigging, it becomes becomes part of the process, doesn't it? So it's very, very hard to do one without the other, from what I've seen.
I couldn't do it. And up until recently, I did my first gig totally sober. I'd normally have to have a couple of beers, and I did my first gig totally sober, which is mental.
Every clown set's been sober, and the amount of people that step up to me like, do you want a line, do you want a pill, do you want stuff? I'm like, I cannot do a set whilst I'm under the influence of absolutely anything. It just does not work.
Yeah. Wow. Goodness me. Gosh. So, hang on, Brian. I associate drink with being able to communicate with people while I'm out. Yeah. As soon as you hit that kind of level, I mean, if you can't communicate, or if you can't become social without some form of drug or drink or whatever, then it's kind of all over, isn't it?
I couldn't do it. I couldn't be sober around people. I could not do it, because I'd walk into that room and I'd be like, nobody's going to like me. Everybody's going to hate me. I'm not going to be me, which is the most idiotic thing ever. And if anybody did say anything bad, or if there was a fight or there was any danger, I, one, probably wouldn't remember because I'd be too fucked. Two, I'd probably handle it better because I'm drunk. And three, who gives a fuck, I'm drunk anyway, which is so negative and so indicative of when you're quite a sensitive person anyway. It's like it's like an armor.
Yeah.
And I think that's why depressed people are so prone to addiction, because you are self-medicating.
If you go back to, there was a mention of PTSD and bipolar. There was the guy that was saying, a person that was saying he was diagnosed with bipolar, but then it turned out to be PTSD, and maybe they don't really know what they're talking about. Kind of about. I mean, you both seem to have suffered PTSD-like things in your youth.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Clearly, this is related, I would imagine, to what we're going through now, as we can, what you're going through now.
Well, my understanding of PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, so you've had some trauma, and you're
trauma.
Stressed.
It's stress, which is caused by a trauma that happened before, and that will cause addiction. That will cause depression. It will cause anxiety. So the two things kind of sit together. Now, it's very easy to get PTSD mixed up with, it was applied a lot to the army, wasn't it? And people that were in sort of active wars.
Yes.
That's the real stuff, because the army break you down and build you back up, and then you leave the army with used to have very, very little support.
Yeah.
So it was often applied to that. But yeah, it is trauma based, and I had traumas, Mark's had traumas, and you do with PTSD, you do have anxieties, you do get depressed, but then also you create more traumas from the bad decisions you're making due to that trauma.
Exactly what our biz just posted. No addiction without trauma, but addiction will cause trauma too. Yeah, they used to call it shell shock in the First World War. People would come back because they'd just literally seen the worst things you could possibly imagine, or had worse things you could imagine done to them, and then expect to just be able to come home and switch it off and whatever. And clearly that the brain doesn't work like that.
But there are people out there with shell shock now. I'd argue that Mark's got shell shock. I'd argue that Mark goes into holes, and he's experiencing shell shock. It's PTSD that he's going through due to things, and he's got coping mechanisms. He's a very healthy, decent person, but yeah, there are a lot of traumas, and those traumas cause this. And I was lucky enough to address these traumas, and I think that's how I manage it a little bit better. But I took a different route, and some people can live with that and they deal with it themselves and they're happier and their lives are good. But I always say it's always worth looking into help and approaching services to try and help you through it, especially if you're feeling out of control. Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think from talking to people like Kent and yourself, it does seem to be that there's generally some trauma in childhood or in early life that then evolves into something and doesn't become the issue anymore. But it's the root cause, it's the trigger for everything. So for example, like Kent having panic attacks and not going out of the house for 40 years, he's now dealing with other stuff, but actually the whole thing was caused by these original stuff that he was going through, you know. So if you're talking about Mark with problems as he was growing up, then again, you know, that caused you to get into a certain mental state that you've been hiding in some way or squashing in some way by locking yourself in, by drinking, by whatever you have to do to cause that, and then that becomes the issue itself, you know.
Well, it becomes a crutch, and you use that to get through life, and the longer you use it to get through life, the harder it is to break. But then it also becomes a coping mechanism, which some people they turn into a healthy person. But you know what I mean? But if you're at the beginnings of it, and you know you are a lot younger, then you know you can break those cycles quite quickly. When you say relatively quite quickly, you know what I mean? Like I suffered with mine for 15, 20 years, whereas if it was identified, you know, when I was in my sort of when I was 15 or 16, then you know I probably wouldn't have got addicted to heroin. I probably wouldn't have been through that, but then I'd be a different person. Probably wouldn't be doing this podcast now and have a BMW in the drive. So,
I suppose what I was alluding to is that. Let's say you had some major trauma when you were young. Let's say your father died or something when you were young, and you never quite came to terms with it, and that led on to lots and lots of trauma later in your life, or lots and lots of addiction problems or whatever that started with you. I think you probably get to a stage where coming to terms with the loss of your father doesn't actually solve the addiction problems down the line, because they've become their own problem. Do you see what I'm saying? You are taking out the root cause. Or
I think the easiest example to highlight what you've just said would be what I learned about people in rehab. And there were women in rehab that they were abused when they were younger, or they had something happen to them when they were younger. They started using drugs, and then they went into prostitution. And then they continued making decisions like that, which were harmful to them, because they were, you know, some people are escorts, and some people it works very well for them. And you know, it is a living that some people have the sex drive, and that's what they like doing, and that's fine. It's not a trauma for them. But these people that I met, they weren't doing it because that it suited their personality, or that's the job they wanted to do. They were doing these things to obtain drugs because their life was out of control. And because they were doing those things they didn't want to do, and when you do that, essentially, if you're doing that to get something but you don't want to do it, essentially you're causing similar effects to if somebody was raped, because you know you didn't want to do it and you were drunk, or you were on drugs. And then what happened, you continue doing that, because then that becomes a solution to needing drugs, and then you continue creating that trauma. And that was what I was talking about, and I think that's what you were highlighting.
Yeah.
Hopefully that was a good example to explain it.
100%. Spot on. It's just a mess, and if it's so often caused, or can be traced all the way back to abuse or something terrible happening in childhood or youthful times. It's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. It's a horrendous situation.
It is really horrendous. And obviously the more you go down that hole, and the more traumas you cause yourself, it's harder when you come out the other side. Because then you've got to deal with the embarrassment, or you know, the situations you put yourself in that you had never been in without this issue. So then you have to deal with that on top, and when you get that help, you start dealing with it. But you know, I feel a lot of the situations I put myself in, and a lot of the dangerous situations and the traumas I caused myself, I still feel for those now, but I understand that they were before. And I understand that I wasn't in my right mind, and the mistakes I've made in my life were mistakes I made because I was a hurt person, you know. So you do end up understanding that, and don't be scared of having to deal with this, because the sooner you deal with this, the easier it's going to be going forward.
Gotcha. We're kind of closing up on the hour. I don't know if there's some other stuff on the list for Mark that you've always wanted to ask him, but you never have.
I don't think there's anything I haven't asked Mark, to be fair. I don't know. No,
the conversations me and Oliver have had. Oh, I could tell you some things, but I won't.
Yeah. But you know, I think this has been really useful, and I think Mark's done a really great job talking about this, and
I hope so.
Another person that's another person on the podcast that can talk openly and hopefully give somebody the power in the chat to start talking as well.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Thank you so much, Mark, for coming on.
Yeah,
and for being so open.
The one thing I will say is, like, I don't think my troubles are that bad, you know.
There we go. See, there's always someone worse. I said this before, haven't I?
Something that we need to drop. You know, it's like my troubles are my troubles.
I've got this. I'm going to have this. You know, if you're watching QI and the that's a trigger for Ollie to go. Wait, you said it. You just said the trigger word there.
Yeah, I know that's wrong, and that's a wrong mentality. You know, just because my problems don't seem as big to you, they're still mine, and they matter to me. You know,
exactly.
Yes,
and that's something that people need to take on board as well. Like, that's literally all I've got to say.
I think what Mark was trying to say is, you know, you never feel as bad as someone else, and that can stop you from getting help. But also, what Mark's saying is, you know, just because you don't think your problems are bad up to somebody else doesn't mean that they're as big and they're as relevant and they're as important. And, you know, I think a lot of people can use that excuse not to get help because, oh, well, I've only just done this. Do you know what I mean? I've only had this. You know, my trauma came from a daddy issue because he was drinking. Yeah. And you know, but my dad was just drinking, and you know, up to people in rehab, I was like, fuck it, I've got no excuse for this behaviour, and I felt guilty about it during rehab, and it stopped my growth because I was like, well, how dare I be taking this time away from that person?
Yeah.
Yep.
And how can the therapists in there be taking me as seriously as that person?
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? So, you know,
Totally.
It's relative, isn't it? It's relative. Do you know what I mean? If you've only ever been slapped, then that slap's going to be the worst thing you've ever had. If somebody's only been punched, the slap's going to be like a cuddle. Do you know what I mean? Yep. So you have to kind of look at it like that. It's relative. But yeah, there we go.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much indeed. Really, really appreciate it. We're going to get a couple more guests on. Obviously, I need to check with Ollie first, apparently.
I'm up for anybody that wants to come. We'll put this straight out. Anybody that wants to come on, I'm up for it. I'm up for it.
So Tony, Dean, hopefully, if you do fancy coming on, that would be amazing. Maybe Rob, if you want to come on Fat Dust, talk about anything. Anyway, you're all extremely welcome. As Ollie said, it would be lovely, and I think it's very insightful to hear other people's stories. You know, you can say as much or as little as you like if you want to come on board, but just get in touch with us. Dom, D-O-M, at mrwiggly.co.uk if you want to email me. Most of you, I think, know us through social media and stuff, so just get in touch. But if you get completely stuck, mrwiggly.co.uk is the website, and there's a contact form there as well if you need to go. So thank you very much indeed.
Thanks,
what
Mark.
Does this week hold for you, Mark? Anything exciting? Are you beginning to come out of that depth, do you think, or is it just more of the same?
Well, I've become the bassist for Brainsniff, and that's like my first passion is guitar based music. So I'm really looking forward to that. And a knock on effect of that is Sam Fett wants to start a band, and Warren wants to do something a little bit more organic because he's a guitarist. Nice. And so it's coming back, but this isn't. And so I'm trying to work on that. It was nice to put something into Dean's thing and then put it into the URL, and people be kind of complimentary about it.
Yeah, but it's still music, Mark. It's still music.
Just make. That's it doesn't matter. Create, just make.
Yeah. And it's music with others, so you get that flow between you as well. So that's cool. Ollie, what are you up to? Have you got a presumably less manic than?
I bought a day book, and I've been filling my day book in like a calendar. So I don't know. It's in my book. I've alleviated my memory to the book. So I'm fixing a couple of techniques. I'm probably going to SLX to fix.
Oh, you mean beats. One about proper works? Because Half God, Half Beast was saying journaling, writing a diary is helpful to become more self-aware. But you just mean booking it all in.
I just mean I'm writing stuff down now, so I'm not in a hail of confusion. In fact, it was a reaction to the panic attack last week. I was like, I need to put this under control. The first step I'm going to take is alleviate having to remember all these things. So the day book has my schedule. I'm just trying to be happy this week. Got a wedding next week with Melissa. I've got my dad's birthday Sunday. This was me actually the first time I've seen my dad since telling the dad story on the podcast.
That is amazing, because I don't know if you missed that. There was some kind of harsh truths coming about, and your dad was in the chat listening.
He was, yeah. So I'll be seeing my dad, which is going to be interesting. So yeah, a good week for me.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. What about you, Mr. Wiggly? What are you up to?
I've got a gig. In a couple of weeks. Which I've never done live for years. So I'm doing the Sonic State are doing an EMOM night on the 26th of November in Bath with about 6 or 7 people.
Close to me.
Yeah, I can pop in and say hello. It might be a fly down and fly back visit, not in a plane, in a car, but yes, I'm going to do that.
What date is it? What date is it?
26th. If you fancy coming,
not this weekend, the weekend after.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
So I'm in Windsor for the wedding.
Well, if you fancy coming down, Mark,
I might do.
Very welcome. You can wear your glasses and all that. Be fine. I'll hook up with you afterwards. But yeah, I'm doing a gig, so I've got to prep for that, which is going to be really weird.
And you can notice flow state, can't you, when you're up there?
I can get
hopefully.
Exactly.
You're going to say, "Oh, I noticed it, and it all went to shit."
It was terrible, and I'm not coming out ever again. Fuck you all. Will there be Soma, Mr. Wig? There might be, Paul, I'll tell you yet. Normally, for most things like this, it's the day before when I get it all organised. So that's going to be good, and some more streamy stuff, and I'm actually doing some electronic work as well. I'm working with Soma and Synthstrom on some of their stuff, which is interesting,
nice.
Getting the soldering out. So yeah, can't complain.
There
Can't complain. Thank you so much again, and thank you everyone in the chat. Good luck to everyone. I've got a feeling I might have missed a post from Wagyu saying he'd achieved a stop drinking thing or whatever. I've looked back and I can't find it, so I might have kind of dreamt that. But congratulations to you, Wagyu, if you have achieved
nice one,
Wagyu.
There.
And we will see you all same time, same place next week. I think probably with Tony Duncan, but check it out. And please do tell your friends or forward on the stream or whatever if it's helpful to you, or if you think you could help some friends, because we're growing organically, which is really nice. And see you next week. Take care.
Amazing. See you later.
Urbanist connect so with the herb pipe. Link up the harmonized, bless the termite. But beyond obsolete blessings, a birthright. We live a language and a lot more in us all worldwide. Cosmic love energy, I go herbicide free, organically, me say worthwhile. Watch the way one of you teach term points in terms of definitions and some termites. Yes, I check the eye. One side is defined by one side the other. I.e. I am an ideas man. I am starting to much of the qualities of my child. Who's way back talking like there's two of me? One is a construct, one is a creativity. The supreme one, all encompassing information in and of itself, most definitely. Another life infinitely, most life infinitely. Beyond the scripture, niceness can be. Blessed be. I continually must pick up a being as the infinity. Yes.